Pierre Poilievre targets a new seat in Alberta. Mark Carney says no to the NDP. Trump takes credit for the Canadian election. And the Canadian movie industry gets hit with 100% tariffs. I'm Jim Check with Now Media. I am in Calgary right now. You can see the tower right in there behind me. I am on the road on my way to San Francisco. On the phone with me, Ian Burns, all the way from our nation's capital in Ottawa. And we do have the live shot playing for you in Kelowna. So we got 3 cities all going at once here.
The best of Canada represented here.
From the east to the west, eh? There you go. The 3 best cities in Canada. How's that? Kelowna, Calgary, and Ottawa.
I think that's right, yeah.
And I'm dressed for the road there. I got my hat on. I know people love this hat, so we're on the road. I'm about to head to the airport here right away. So, and then for the rest of the week, Josh Duncan, our news director, will be sitting in for me with Ian Burns. And for Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, before he heads off to Europe. And then we're going to have a special guest on Friday. Andrea Berg is going to sit in with Ian and I, and then I'll be back Monday with Ian on a regular basis. Starting off, though, Pierre Poilievre has targeted a seat in rural Alberta. And some people are calling me a hero, and then some people are calling me like foul on this. But yeah, so one guy stepped down to give Pierre Poilievre the chance to run in a by-election in Battle River.
Yeah, so the idea is that it's going to be temporary. And I presume he's then going to try and get a seat closer to Ottawa, because I think his life is in Ottawa. You know, he's got 2 young kids and his wife has been there. I think that's kind of, even though he's from Calgary, his city really is Ottawa. That's the place that he knows. But he's going to, you know, they have their own property anyway, that Stoneway, I think it's called, isn't it? Which is for the opposition. So he won't necessarily have to move out to Alberta. So it's not, you know, it's not that bad for him. As for like the comments that people have made that it's you know, that it's somehow untoward or it's anti-democratic or whatever, I've heard a few comments like that. I think almost without exception, those comments are coming from people that had nothing whatsoever to say about the Liberal Party expelling a man who had represented Nepean in Ottawa for, what was it, 15 years or something like that? Almost without any kind of, no real explanation, no attempt to justify it, really. Just said, oh, no, he's a bad egg, he's off. And then parachuting Mark Carney into that riding. I mean, if you're going to criticize Poilievre for doing this, then you're going to have to do the same thing for Mark Carney, aren't you? In which case, you know, the criticism is of the system as a whole rather than individuals.
Yeah, 1 second here. I just got to kill something here, like something's causing a feedback loop there. Mark Carney says no to the NDP vote pact this time.
Yeah, that's well, it depends. Like, you have to define the word pact, don't you? I mean, they can be very informal things. So it is still theoretically possible that he'll have some kind of informal arrangement, like vote by vote sort of thing. But all the talk in town now, including from his mouth, from the horse's mouth, is that there's going to be some sort of attempt made at like a grand national coalition where the Tories and Liberals and I guess the NDP, for whatever that's worth, will all work together. And the Bloc, but I wouldn't expect the Bloc to, you know, play on anyone else's team, even for 5 minutes. But the idea is that this sort of grand coalition will try and stare down the Trump crisis and also the economic crisis. I mean, it kind of makes sense to an extent. I don't know. Again, I don't know if that would be formalized, but I mean, you know, you and I and Renee and many other people have said this, but we looked at both the platforms. We've listened to all the press conferences and all of the chatter, and there's a hell of a lot of common ground between the Tories and Liberals. I think more so than usual. So it's not like it would be that hard. Just in policy terms, you know, the Liberals kind of availed themselves of quite a lot of the Tories' best ideas, didn't they? They just decided to take them. So I think there's a lot of common ground. I wouldn't be too surprised if that did in fact happen.
Well, if there was a time for Canada to come together, I guess that time would be now. now or never, right?
Absolutely. And, Mark Carney, he says this a lot, and he's right, that he hasn't really been in politics. Like, he hasn't been a political activist or a political figure, really, until recently, though he has been associated with the Liberal Party for quite a while. But if you think about how he's previously worked, it's as a central banker in Britain and in Canada. That's a job where you must have everybody. Like, you've got to speak to everybody. You've got to be on like a very big team. So I feel like it's probably going to be more natural to him to do it like that anyway. And he kept on saying, he's the one that's amped this up as a gigantic crisis and existential and all the rest of it. If you look at, for example, during the Second World War in Britain, at least, but this is also true elsewhere. I think in Canada as well, actually. Though my knowledge of that's a bit history, a bit of that history is a bit vague. But they come together. Churchill and Clement Attlee, for example, two like ideological enemies in this British Parliament. They just worked together. They made a national government. That usually happens when you're in an actual, life or death conflict. So I don't know. A lot of it sort of points in that direction, doesn't it? But the question is, obviously, the Liberal insiders, the machine that's kind of given Carney this win, they're going to have sort of strategic concerns, aren't they? They're going to ask, like, what's in this for us? How will this help the Liberal Party? Whereas maybe Carney's not thinking so much about the Liberal Party. He's thinking more about himself and Canada. And then the Tories, for the same reason, they'll be thinking, like, how's this going to help us? So it's, there's a lot to be ironed out there, but I don't see why they can't at least have like a narrow set of issues that they cooperate on, like Trump and economic development.
Well, that would be refreshing if the two of them could find a way to work together, because there's a lot of stuff to solve. There's no doubt about that.
Indeed. Yeah.
What's that? NDP is going to pick a new leader tonight, or an interim leader at the least.
Yeah, I mean, who's even left? You would
Yeah,
think the only other NDP, or there's a couple of NDP MPs that have a kind of a profile. One was Charlie Angus, and he had it for very bad reasons. Obviously, he's the guy that insulted people in the street and just made a general fool out of himself every 5 minutes. And then the other one is Nikki Ashton, and she lost her seat. So, by the way, Charlie Angus didn't even run, so he's not in Parliament. Nikki Ashton lost her seat, and Jagmeet Singh lost his seat and is generally like got the stink of failure about him. So who's left? I can't really think of any particularly sort of big dogs there.
Yeah, and they thought they would have the hammer again, but it doesn't sound like it right now, because the Carney has said no. So whether that no holds or not will remain to be seen. But as of right now, the NDP basically kind of like self-imploded on itself there.
Well, it's kind of, you can see just to go back to Carney there, you can kind of see why Carney wouldn't want to get into that situation again, can't you? Because the NDP, in effect, they kind of they were the tail that wagged the dog, weren't they? In the Trudeau minorities, they had like massive amounts of power. In many ways, kind of directed the approach of the government on a lot of big things like the legislative agenda. And yet they did that without any real sense of responsibility. They didn't really, it was almost like they hadn't put a stake on the table. They just kind of, it was very self-indulgent, and it was almost a bit, fantasy economics a lot of the time, or fantasy politics. Whereas if the Tories were forced, or if the Tories agreed to that, they couldn't be anywhere near as irresponsible as that, because they would hope to be the next government. Whereas the NDP never hoped that. They were always just a sort of fringe party. They were always just going to kind of behave in a way that like the Conservatives or the Liberals never could. So Carney might be looking at that, and he might be thinking, like, what's to gain if I go in with the NDP? Like you say, they'll have the hammer, they'll have the sword hanging over my neck. They'll be able to kind of direct this ship, and I don't want to do that. I mean, that makes sense, doesn't it? If you're in Carney's shoes, you really wouldn't want that, would you? Whereas at least the Tories, they can, to some extent, be kept on a leash, because they want to be the next government. So they're not gonna make ridiculous demands. They're not gonna sabotage the government, are they? They have to behave responsibly.
Yeah, and Carney can kind of put Poilievre in a tight spot too by saying, "Hey, these policies are great for Canada. They're kind of your policies. So work with me on these, or I'll call a snap election. Probably I'll get my majority anyway." So I mean, it's kind of like, in my mind, it might be better to work with the Conservatives because Carney seemed more aligned. I mean, he took a lot of the policies that Poilievre's government put forward.
Yeah. The
Party put
only
forward,
the only big so the sort of elephant in the room, the big gap between them is on Green New Deal malarkey, that
right?
kind of thing. It's on energy and the extent to which Canada should lean into renewables rather than fossil fuels. That, as far as I'm aware, that's going to be the main area of dispute.
Looks like Blanchette is not as happy as you that the king's coming to town. The Bloc MPs are saying it's strange to get King Charles here to open Parliament as a symbolic act of sovereignty.
That the quote there is brilliant, isn't it? Quebecers reject this institution. And then he goes on, this is from the Bloc itself, goes on to say, Mark Carney is inviting a foreign monarch to open Parliament. Strange. Can we get a fact check? Rosie Barton, you around? You got any free time, Rosie? Not a foreign monarch, it's Canada's monarch. So, false. And then Quebecers reject this institution. False. No, they don't. Loads of people in Quebec respect the monarchy and want it to hang around. But it's also, you're in Canada. Canada's a monarchy. That's Canada's monarch. Like, get over it. it's just and this is what I mean. Like, if you're Mark Carney, how do you do business with people like this? How do you do business with unserious people? And he'll know this 10 times better than I do or you do. Like, how do you practically get anything done with people that are this ridiculous? You've got to work with responsible people. And that, just to me, it's sort of this stupid tantrum from the Bloc sort of emphasizes that Carney really would be wise to try and figure something out with the Tories.
Yeah, he said he never meant it when he was required to swear true allegiance to the crown when signing the role as a member of parliament. He said the Bloc is not sincere in its oath. The Bloc is irrevocably sincere, heart and mind, in its oath and its commitment to the people of Quebec. And an oath under duress is worth nothing. There you go. And if it doesn't come from the heart, it has no value. So how do you tell when somebody's saying an oath from the heart or from their mouth?
Well, how do you do business with people that admit something like that? Can you imagine? I mean, I can't imagine. I can't imagine buying like an insurance policy of somebody that spoke like that. I can't imagine buying like a sandwich at a store from somebody with that sort of attitude. And yet, this is quite a large party in our House of Commons, in our Parliament. It's just
That's
how
it.
do you do business with
I,
people that are this irresponsible and this committed to deconstruction rather than construction?
I had my fingers crossed behind my back while I was saying it. How's that? That's just as good, I guess.
It's just, this is like, we talk about 1759, or I do anyway, quite a lot. That's the year in which the British conquered Quebec on New France. But it's just like, again, I hate to say it, talk about my homeland in such a way, but what have the British passed down to us here in Canada? What have they bequeathed to us? What a mess. Like, we have to sort of, we can't even agree on who our legitimate head of state is in this country because of Quebec and because the British fumbled that conquest. They didn't even know that. They didn't even expect that it was going to happen. Like, Quebec fell with surprising ease. And it was because of James Wolfe, who's just a mad general who wanted to be sort of famous and pull off a great conquest. And he actually did, to everyone's surprise. But it's kind of like, here we are, like a couple of 100 years later, and we're stuck with these people, like the sort of nationalist Quebecois, who just refuse to accept that ever happened. Like, that, to them, that was an illegitimate act. And here we are. I mean, it has like actual real life consequences for us. It has consequences for our lives. And it's just, once again, the British Empire has let us down.
Donald Trump has celebrated his 100 days in office, and he's been sitting down with the press and all kinds of press. He sat down with Kristen there from Meet the Press, and he talked about Canada a little bit. And he said, "We're going to play the clip. Actually, let's play that clip of Trump's words on Canada." I think we're going to play that clip anyway.
You said no, you don't rule out anything. Would you rule out military force to take Canada?
Well, I think we're not going to ever get to that point. It could happen. Something could happen with Greenland. I'll be honest. We need that for national and international security.
But not
I
with
think
Canada?
It's highly unlikely. I don't see it with Canada. I just don't see it. I have to be honest with you.
Okay, but you don't rule it out for Greenland.
And by the way, Canada, they spend less money on military than practically any nation in the world. They pay NATO less than any nation. They think we're subsidized. They think we are going to protect them. And really, we are. But the truth is, they don't carry their full share, and it's unfair to the United States and our taxpayers.
But you are not ruling out military force to take Greenland.
I don't rule it out. I don't say I'm going to do it, but I don't rule out anything. No, not there. We need that. We need Greenland very badly. Greenland is a very small amount of people, which we'll take care of and we'll cherish them and all of that. But we need that for international security.
The Trump organization.
There you go.
Well, he kind of, considering he's meant to be this great deal maker, and he's supposed to be, that's how he defines himself. That was a bit funny that he said, Canada thinks that we're going to protect them, and really we will. It's like, oh, okay then. Well, we won't build a military then.
Well, I mean, he doesn't have much choice really, because I mean, otherwise he would leave this whole northern border exposed as well. So.
Exactly, and that's the point that we've made numerous times. But the way to flip that around is almost kind of like, from the Canadian perspective, we allow the Americans to have a crazy amount of access to our land and our airspace and the sea around Canada and all the rest of it. It's like, how much do we charge the Americans for that access? Maybe we should take a leaf out of Pakistan's book and do what Pakistan did during the War on Terror and basically just extort the United States to give them permission to use our territory for military operations. How do you think Trump would like that?
Yeah, I don't know. Well, he's in the news there. He's actually come out and said that he's positively delighted about the role that he played in Canada's election. I mean, that's no surprise. I mean, he tweeted that the day of the election to make sure that it's the way he wanted.
And he knew that and mentioned that, didn't he? This comment that he's made about how the Conservatives were X points ahead and I've changed it. He made that comment ages ago, didn't he? For the first time. So he knows about this, and he's known about it for a very long time. He's known that every time he opens his mouth in regard to Canada, that he boosts the Liberals, poll ratings. He knew that, and he kept doing it, which means that you can only conclude, according to basic reasoning, you can only conclude that he wanted the Liberal Party to win. Why that is, I mean, I have no idea, and that's a different question. But he certainly he wanted it, and I think in this article is based on a journalist that interviewed him, who spoke about that afterwards. So it's not on the record stuff, really. It's a bit of a strange story. I'm sure it's legit. It's from the Atlantic, but if you actually read that, Trump comes across as just kind of like clinically narcissistic. It's kind of insane, like in almost like a true meaning of that word. He seems to be mentally ill with narcissism, because it's just all about himself. Like it's almost like he didn't even really care about.
Yeah, he reminds me of a Seinfeld episode.
Election, as long as he was a protagonist in it.
He reminds me of a Seinfeld episode when George talked about himself in the third person. And Trump talks about himself in the third person many times. Like, yeah, Trump.
He did, didn't he? That comment where he's like, the other guy didn't like Trump.
No, he does it a lot. He talks about Trump like in the third, like Trump is a thing in its own, and maybe in his mind it is. But CBC looks like they tried to do this expose, which to me, it doesn't look like it's much of an expose. they went and got some Freedom of Information documents on how much Daniel's trip cost to go to Mar-a-Lago. Melanie Jolie would have spent that just on the liquor tab, just on the flight there.
and wouldn't even have got a meeting. She would have ended up
No.
she would have ended up chatting to like Amnesty International or something like that.
Yeah, like how much did she spend on that one trip? It was like well over like $50,000 just in the liquor bill.
Yeah, I think this whole story is predicated on exploiting the naivety of the general public in terms of the cost of diplomacy and the cost of government. If you think about how many billions of dollars are spent by the federal government on pointless garbage that just should never, you would never persuade private individuals to spend that money. It's only through taxation that it's possible to spend money on some of the stupid things the Canadian government spends money on. So in that context, 10 grand for FaceTime with Trump, especially at that time, which it was in January, wasn't it? I mean, that's a bargain. That is an absolute bargain.
That should be a star, but I think the point of this article is more of tar and feather as the Albertans are looking to do a vote for separation, and I think they're bringing up the tar and feathers and see what they can stick to her.
Yeah, and if it was somebody that the CBC or any news outlet, if it was a figure that they respected and liked, such as, for example, Mark Carney, and they did this story, they would make sure that they called up a professor at some mediocre university in Canada who could then come and say, like, contextualize it and say, look, this is actually really cheap for what was got here, which is FaceTime with the president, which is who everybody wants to speak to now and then, and it would have been contextualized, it all would have made sense. But obviously, because it's Danielle Smith and it's somebody that the media dislikes, and particularly CBC, there is no such context in this story.
Yeah, no, I think I jumped out there for a second, but I'm back. It's going to be a bit clunky, like I said, it's a bit clunky. But yeah, this looks like a hit job piece. And like, again, like you said, 10 grand to get FaceTime with a country that is actually trying to put Canada on its knees. I think that would have been the bargain of the century. Again, if you compare it to Melanie Jolie's junkets and Justin Trudeau's junkets, like what he spent, and what was that when he went to wasn't it the King's coronation, what he spent? Like, it was just some crazy numbers.
It was the Queen's funeral. That was the one where he was like playing piano or something.
Yeah, piano when he was just
no.
chugging it down there. Yeah, so like, and then here's the CBC going after the FOI. They should do some FOIs like on a whole bunch of things. Like, where's those green documents? When you get those going, that would be interesting to see.
Yeah. Sorry, just to correct myself, I've gone back into that story, the CBC story now, and right at the bottom, they do indeed include a quote from a political science professor at Mount Royal University. But however, this professor says, we're talking about a large sum of money, $10,000, and then goes on to say, for what might have been a very brief exchange and had very little impact. I mean, okay. I'm sure if you, Julia Wong, if you're listening, if you just canvass some other people, maybe some people with actual expertise and reputation and credibility, and ask them, is $10,000 a good price to pay for FaceTime with Donald Trump in January? I think you might find that those people would tell you that that's a hell of a bargain. There are people, bear in mind that this is effectively lobbying. This is lobbying. There are people in Washington, D.C. that spend $10,000 for the prospect of maybe sharing a room with somebody that's like 5 degrees of separation away from Donald Trump, so that they can ask that person to ask someone else, to ask someone else, to ask someone else, to ask Trump. Like, come on, $10,000 for FaceTime with the US president. That's, I mean, come on.
We sent a delegation down there that included Melanie Jolie, the finance minister, and a couple other people, and they ended up in a media room. I can't remember the media outlet's name. That's what they got, and let's see if we get the price tag for that one.
Indeed, and I mean, come on, like.
And they didn't get a meeting.
All the things
they got
that
nothing.
The government wastes money on. I don't think there are many Canadians that would realistically tell you that it's a bad idea to go and be in the same room with Donald Trump, and not just in the same room, but actually speak to him about the tariffs. Like, that's a win. I refuse to believe that Canadians are stupid enough to think that that's a waste of
Canadians,
money.
or sorry, CBC continues to embarrass itself by looking very partisan with a story such as this. There you go.
Well, they don't care now, do they? They've got their nest feathered now. The right candidate won for them.
Right, so they're doing the work, paying the bills. This is the Holly Dome Blacklock story, and here's the Canadian Heritage Foundation, the same the same ones that fund some of these local outlets, or not local outlets, some of these mainstream media outlets, paid a UK consultant $128,000 for 6 months' work tracking pro-Israel social media posts. Why didn't CBC do this story? That's a lot more money, and somebody's just tracking social media posts. But it was Holly Dome of Blacklocks that did it, and she gets no money from the government.
Well, I mean, that is the question. Why didn't the CBC do this? That's the question. Just keep asking that question.
If they had to choose between these two stories, why are they doing the $10,000 story on Daniel Smith and not this story that is relevant, like on so many levels? Here, this pro-Israel group is getting tracked and paid for, and especially the money's being spent on a UK consultant for 6 months' work tracking social media posts. Couldn't AI track social media posts? Like, why do we need to pay somebody $128,000 to follow social media posts? Seems ridiculous, no?
It's just money for nothing, frankly, and once again shows that if you want to make a lot of money and you don't have much talent and you're not, you're pretty lazy, become a consultant, get into that business, because that's clearly where all the money is.
Well, if Julia's watching, like, Julie, maybe take a look at what Holly Dome has uncovered versus what you've uncovered. Spend your energy where it's needed.
And it's both the same. The stories are exactly the same. They're freedom of information requests. Precisely the same amount of sort of effort and expertise required, if you want to put it that way. But they chose to do... I mean, what I find interesting, obviously they wanted this to be a big scandal. They wanted this to be a massive hit job on Danielle Smith. What they got in the end was an extraordinarily modest amount of money spent for a marvelously sort of unparalleled success in terms of getting access to Trump at a time when Trudeau couldn't even get access to Trump, by the way. I mean, come on. And then whenever they had any sort of interaction, Trump just insulted Trudeau. But, they thought, all right, this is going to be a gotcha story. Then they got that bag and it was very modest. And they thought, okay, well, we'll just ring up some partisan, mediocre professor somewhere who's going to complain about it. And then we'll just cross our fingers and hope that Canadians are stupid enough to swallow that and not question it.
And it'll be interesting to see how much the talking heads on the the news shows talk about this too, is whether it's a gotcha or they just let it go.
Well, I feel like because it's an exclusive to CBC, they got it through freedom of information. They'll probably be reluctant to do it anyway, but they might talk about it. But then you have to imagine, I mean, people often think there's some kind of mad conspiracy about a newsroom and how they decide what to cover. But often it's just like this conversation that we're having now. You just try and figure it out. It's like, hold on, 10 grand. Is that even that much money? It's like, it'd be questions like that. And I would like to hope that less partisan media, less partisan than CBC, like the Globe and Mail and so on, I would like to think that they would look at that and just say, that's daft. There's no way. That's not a story.
Donald Trump stuck a knife in the Canadian movie industry this morning here with 100% tariffs on movies made outside of the United States of America. And he says he's doing it to save Hollywood.
But just like steel and just like aluminium and to an extent cars, this tariff or this threat is just a proxy for an attack on Canada, isn't it? Because Hollywood North is kind of where so much of the money goes from Hollywood when it's not spent in the US, for convenience sake, but also because it's cheaper.
Tax credits.
So I just see it again as another attack. It's another attack on Canada.
Yeah.
He doesn't like Canada, does he? Even though he wants to apparently cherish it as a state, he doesn't seem to like it very much.
Trump says he's going to reopen Alcatraz, and I'm on my way to San Francisco, and I've toured Alcatraz before. I don't know what that would take to reopen that thing. It's cold there in the middle of that little rock out there in the middle, and not very many people have ever escaped from there either. And
Yeah,
it looks pretty dire. Have you been to Alcatraz?
I've not actually been to Alcatraz, but I've looked at it, and it does look quite lonely there, doesn't it? And it's also the sea there, like the Bay of San Francisco. It's quite choppy a lot of the time, quite
Yeah.
windy, and it just looks like it's the last place you'd want to be. And then there's great whites, obviously, knocking around in there.
Yeah, there's all kinds of stuff. When I toured in the bay there, it was pods of dolphins as well. So you don't know which fin's coming up for you.
It's like it is actually quite unsettling, isn't it? Just to look at it. And if you're on the Golden Gate Bridge and you can go down the side, can't you? Kind of like you can get right down low, like to look at the water, and it is quite intimidating. It's not a kind of peaceful, friendly bit of water, that is it? But I don't know what he's thinking with this old Trumpy. I imagine it must bring in quite a lot of money, that museum. So
yeah,
it
it's
sound
busy.
like a great deal.
You have to book out to get there, and I just pulled up our friend ChatGPT, our fact checker here, and it says there's 36 people that attempted to escape Alcatraz, and when they ran that prison from 1934 to 1963 across 14 separate escape attempts, 23 were caught alive, 6 were shot and killed during their escape attempts, 2 drowned, and 5 were listed as missing and presumed drowned.
So which one of those is Clint Eastwood from the film?
Frank Morris and his brothers John and Clarence Anglin, who escaped in June 1960, their fate remains unknown. There you go. So they're the famous
there
ones.
you go. But yeah, it might not look like much to swim that, because it isn't particularly it's not a really fast swim, is it? But it's just
It's cold. It's very cold.
brutal sort of
Hypothermia.
environment.
Hypothermia. Choppy is all, and it's quite a ways from the shoreline too.
And the sharks. Don't forget the sharks.
Don't forget the sharks. Yeah. And there you go. This is just a post that was out there. It just shows you where people are moving to, and Alberta's been attracting people. That song, we've talked about it in the past, Alberta Bound. That song gets played over and over and over again for many young people as they move to Alberta for opportunity.
It's been happening a while now, hasn't it? I mean, I've done so many of these stories based on data from Statistics Canada, which shows exactly this. BC loses, Alberta gains. And then Ontario, obviously, loses a lot of people as well. But in terms of interprovincial migration, I think it's a couple of years, or maybe 3 years running now, that BC's been losing people. And they, more often than not, they tend to go to Alberta.
Yeah, no, it's housing is cheaper in some areas for sure. Edmonton is one of the cheaper cities, one of the cooler cities, though, for sure. This is one of the things that the Liberals have talked about, and Pierre Poilievre has talked about, that the United States needs Canada for the critical earth minerals. But Trump did sign that deal with Zelensky in Ukraine, which is a lot of that has to do with rare earth or critical minerals. Ukraine is absolutely rich in those rare earth minerals.
It's just not, I don't know. It's very, very far away. It's in a war zone right now, and it could be a war zone again even if a peace is agreed this year or in the sort of coming months. It could still easily be a war zone again. It's a very sketchy place to do business. So, whoever this person is, Sean Newman podcast, I don't know if he's thought that bit through. Whereas Canada, if you can get a critical minerals deal with Canada done, and the US already have them with Canada, the Department of Defense has come and spent money in Canada. I think that's in Quebec, where they've to go and get minerals directly. If you could do that as the US, obviously that's the preferred option, isn't it? Because Canada's a safe, reliable country, and it's also just right there. So your supply lines are safe as well. I mean, there's no comparison really, is there, between Ukraine and Canada in that sense?
One just needs a transport truck to haul it across the border, for sure. Ottawa rethinking its U.S. weapons contracts, and South Korea's put up its hand and said we can supply you with everything from howitzers to submarines.
Yeah.
We don't want to buy any more in
Well,
a
they also
garage
do a
sale.
rip-off F-35 thing, don't they?
We don't want to buy any more used subs from the English.
Well, the Koreans, they're like the masters of shipbuilding, aren't they? They're like, I think they churn out the most ships of anyone in the world. So they certainly have the technology and the know-how.
So that trial that we've been watching here in Calgary, actually, a jury rejects that not criminal responsible defense and finds that man guilty of murder. And that man, he was a 29-year-old man charged with first-degree murder in the 2022 death of fitness instructor Vanessa Ladouceur in a downtown street when he body checked her into an alley and then stabbed her repeatedly and many times in the face.
Absolutely brutal, isn't it? So sad.
And he said that he was schizophrenic and hallucinating, and he said he saw creatures like lions and tigers and bears with mangled faces, and that sad tragedy for that family.
And the prosecutor in this case said he accused him of having lied to police and also to like counselors and psychiatrists or whatever, so that he could get off for the crime. Yeah. And this is hardly new, is it? People have been doing this for centuries, but I think in this current sort of like the legal system that we have now, the way that things are arranged, if you can persuade people that you're not mentally fit to be tried or whatever, then your treatment will be a lot better. So there is an incentive structure in place, isn't there, for people to try and get
sure
off
is. To escape responsibility.
Regard.
To escape the responsibility, for sure.
That's
Gavin
something to think
Dew.
about, really, isn't it?
Gavin Dew, Kelowna MLA, asked the question of Adrian Dix and then of a deal being done with the BC NDP and the Liberal government. We're going to play this clip for you.
But I do simply wish to get it on the record that what I have just heard is that the Premier and this government, in collaboration with the Carney Liberal government, are actively supportive of dredging Burrard Inlet to allow fully laden Aframax tankers to transit. Is that correct? Yes or no?
Minister.
Yes.
But I do simply...
Breathless.
There you go.
From Adrian Dix, wasn't it? A breathless response.
Yeah, just he got the same answer that Mark Carney had when asked about the NDP. No. He got a yes.
It's so funny because when I heard Gavin Dew say that the first time, when I heard him frame that question, yes or no, the first thing I said in my inner monologue was, "There's no chance that he's going to say yes or no. They never do." And then Dixie came out there with a surprise.
I think they wanted to say yes so that they could look good for the Liberals right there, right? Because it is something that is unusual. That's why you got them to say it on the record, so they couldn't skirt around it. Because many of the people that, like the Green Party, will be losing its mind right now, and that's the party that they're trying to appease as well, right? Because they hold the balance for them. And the Green Party, they just cut the Clean BC incentives. They cut a whole bunch of things, the PST free on EVs, and now here they are dredging the Burrard Inlet for tankers.
But I mean, the Greens, the BC Greens, they should have known what they were in for, because David Eby did not campaign as a left-wing candidate. His party was not particularly left-wing when it campaigned in the BC election. It was actually quite moderate, wasn't it? With lots of kind of middle ground policies like forced medical treatment for people, and many things that we went through, getting rid of the carbon tax and all that. So they should have known. And to be honest, I think most people are fed up with like tiny little pressure group fringe parties like the Greens dictating policy. They can maybe get one little concession here and there, something. They can have a statue of a dolphin built or something like that. But for them to think that they can decide the overall economic policy of British Columbia, I mean, No. How is that democratic?
Yeah, and then just a little bit on the Russia-Ukraine where we talked briefly about it, but there's a piece out here from BBC and saying that it's costing 27 lives for every kilometer that Russia takes, and that they've lost more troops in this last little while than. Yeah, it's just a bloody mess that war that continues to go on there in the Ukraine.
But this is quite interesting because the BBC, the way that they do this, they're quite strict about it. They've actually added up every single one of these deaths, and they do it through like social media and interviews and stuff like that. They're working really hard because obviously Russia lies about its death figures, as does Ukraine most likely. So yeah, they've actually done a lot of work here, and they found out that in 2024 they confirmed at least 45,000 dead. I mean, that's how many Canadians died in the Second World War, just to put that into context. And I don't want to make light of that because it's an absolute. This is like a human tragedy. This is the worst thing happening in the world, bar nothing else, and it's been going on for 3 years now. And they estimate the Russians have lost up to 230,000 total deaths since 2022. I mean, for God's sake, that's just absolutely appalling, isn't it?
Yeah, let's move on to markets here. Markets were down earlier when I clipped this, down marginally. Now they're up. Like I said, the markets are choppy in here, and I think they have 9 up days here. So you're going to start to see a little bit of like chopping for sure. And there you go. Markets relatively up today. Just minor though, like nothing spectacular for sure.
Well, they're just how on earth can you have any certainty? Again, we've woken up and there's another 100% tariff on the table. It's just topsy turvy.
Gold. Well, gold was up big this morning. Gold was up over $100 an ounce early on. Right now, it's only up $70 an ounce. So gold, obviously, when gold is flying, that means there's unrest somewhere. Gold is our canary in the coal mine. Gold is doing extremely well as usual. And gold in Canadian dollars, 45.75. So yeah, like that ounce of gold will get you a pretty nice suit, right? Bitcoin, like kind of like set back a bit from where it was. Like it was banging on the door of 100,000 there, and I think it's just settled back a bit here. 94,000 right now. So there you go. Canadian dollar, unsure of where it's going, right? And again, it's the U.S. Weakness that is really supporting the Canadian dollar as well. Big deal in the oil and gas
industry. Reacted to Carney's election, hasn't it? Which I find interesting. There hasn't been anything.
Yeah, it would have went very high in a conservative win for sure because of the unleash the resources thing. So, I think it's taking a wait and look approach. Maybe Poilievre and Carney will work together, and then that will be positive for the Canadian dollar as well. Big deal in the oil and gas industry. Sunoco to acquire Parkland, a $9 billion deal. And that's Sunoco announced plans to acquire Canada-based Parkland Corporation, a deal valued at approximately $9.1 billion. This acquisition will create the largest independent fuel distributor in the Americas. There you go. And then we got to look.
Mean independent in that context?
I'm not sure.
Because that's quite an interesting way of phrasing it. I'm just trying to decipher that. Does it mean because it's not a multinational or something? I don't really get it.
U.S. ports getting awfully quiet, and this is just the Chinese tankers coming to the U.S. ports. Some of them actually turned around, so that is showing you what that is happening there with those Chinese tankers.
Bad news for Amazon and Temu and all that.
Yeah, I think Donald Trump in his interview there had a couple of things with Kristen there talking about, like it was an interesting interview. I'd advise people to go watch it. You can love or hate Trump, but one thing he is doing is a ton of interviews. He just, like that narcissism that you talk about. I mean, he does interviews just like with whoever and whenever and ad hoc. I mean, he's probably done more interviews in a week than Joe Biden and Kamala Harris did in their whole term. Can you remember Joe Biden sitting down with anybody at length like that?
Well, after he screwed up the debate, he did sit down, didn't he, to do a kind of mea culpa, where he was like, "I know it wasn't perfect, but I'm all there in the head."
But I'm just saying, like, he didn't do ad hoc press conferences. He wouldn't take
No.
questions. And Kamala Harris was like, you didn't even know she was there for the most part, not till the end, right? Like she wasn't like, she was basically in the back room somewhere hiding.
Yeah. Though I would say what's interesting so far in this presidency is that he doesn't do a lot in the press room, does he?
No, he
I
hasn't.
remember
Yeah.
in the first term, he was always at the podium, wasn't
Yeah.
he?
He's
I don't know if
leaving
that was just
Caroline
because of
Levitt in
COVID or
there.
whatever, but
Yeah, he's leaving Caroline Levitt in there and a couple other people that show up there all the time. We got a little clip here from RFK talking about why houses are so expensive. And the same thing holds true here in Canada. But let's play this clip from RFK.
2 years ago, the average cost of a house in this country was $215,000. Today, it's $400,000, and the interest rates you're going to pay on that house have gone from 1% to 7%. So you're paying 10 times as much for that house you were 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. I have 7 kids. They're all between 20, 35 years old. They should be moving into their own homes. Mm-hmm. But I don't know any of them or any of their friends who are actually buying a home now. And one of the reasons for why did the price of housing go up? Well, one, because of the inflation, because we spent $8 trillion on wars and $16 trillion on COVID, which we didn't have. So they print money, which caused the price of everything to go up. More importantly, there's 3 giant corporations, BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard, which own collectively, they own each other. So it's really one giant corporation. But they also own 89% of the S&P 500. They own everything. They've now decided to buy every single family home in America. So if they stay on the current trajectory, they will own 60% of the homes in this country, single family homes, by 2030. They literally are trying to buy everything. And the head of it, Larry Fink, the CEO of BlackRock, is on the board of the World Economic Forum, and what they've said, we want this great reset, which is you will own nothing and you will be happy. Well, they're on their way to making sure that we don't own anything. So you all probably have heard of people who are about to buy a home, and somebody comes in at the last minute with a cash offer and snatches off the.
same old story, innit? We've heard that many times. But I find it interesting that he said he's got 7 kids, and none of them are talking about getting a home. I mean, consider that RFK is an American aristocrat, and even his kids aren't thinking about it. I mean, that's a bit mad, isn't it?
So in Canada too, like in this, and I might get this number a little bit wrong. There's a stat that I think 80% of the rental properties in the territories is owned by one company, and I can't remember the name, whether it was Vanguard or whatever. But there is this same problem happening in Canada. These large corporations are using borrowed money at low interest rates and buying up homes, competing with the home buyers. That's the real problem. It's not Airbnb and that. It's these large corporations using borrowed money that they don't even have to pay. They float bonds. They float bonds out there. Like say they float a bond. Let's just pick a number, $1 billion. And at a low interest rate, because they get to borrow at a low interest rate. And they never pay back the principal. They just pay the carry costs. And then they go out into the market and compete with you that have to go out and earn that money and pay tax on it. And all they're paying is the carrying cost because they just float another bond to cover the last bond.
Yeah. It's the behavior. It's very antisocial behavior, isn't it? It's like anti-civilizational.
It's the
but
Pottersville thing,
you can't
right?
blame them for wanting to do this because there's so much money in real estate. Like, obviously, they're going to have their eyes on it.
Yeah. Well, we've seen it with Mark Carney in Brookfield, when some of the documents that we've seen, some of the memos that he sent out to the shareholders, how we have the Canadian renters in the sweet spot.
Yeah. Well, absolutely. It's very easy money, isn't it, as well? Because they can just amass a gigantic portfolio, and they're guaranteed rent income. You know, they're guaranteed a pretty huge return. So, and
So
they
it's
also influence policy at a higher level, so they can try and get things in there, you know, to go in their favor. It's very dastardly behavior.
the distinct advantage they have over you and I is the access to cheap financing, and we even seen that in the Liberal platform. They're $35 billion for housing, not to the individuals, but to corporations, in the way of easy financing for them to build homes for you to rent or to, you know what I mean? Like it's the access to cheap financing that they get, and a lot of times they don't even repay it; they just repay it with another bond, and that is
Yeah, totally.
that is
Yeah,
the
it's a scam, isn't it? Really, let's be honest.
yeah. If anybody's interested, I can kind of show you how it all works. And they pay a carry cost where you pay a mortgage plus carry cost, and their carry cost is very, very little. Plus, they write off their carry cost, right? You don't get to write it off on your principal residence, do you? You do not.
No.
Do
But this
not.
is kind of, you know, then the question that immediately follows, or should follow, is why has this practice not been made illegal? Why has it not been banned? The answer is probably not very encouraging for our
Why
democracy.
can a corporation like Brookfield, one of Canada's largest corporations, why can it dodge $5 billion in taxes and not get caught and forced to pay it when if you cheat on your taxes for whatever, they're banging down your door?
Indeed.
We got something here. Starbase is officially a city. We're going to play a little clip for you for the future of the world. Starbase, the new jump-off point to an interplanetary species. How's that for a build-up? And right on, Ian, that was the major difference between the Conservative and Liberal home building plan. ET, phone home.
My only knowledge of that place as like somewhere to live comes from, I can't remember which one of Elon Musk's wives or consorts it was that said it, but she came out and complained about how horrible it is to live there. But it doesn't look so horrible there in that video, does it? Got some nice little chocolate labs and everything.
There's a lot of people that say a lot of great things about it. So there you go. Who knows, right? ET phone home though.
Well, all of his consorts, his harem, they almost all seem to complain pretty much. So I don't know what that is. I don't know what that's about. Maybe it's
Not enough cash
something
money.
to do with ongoing legal cases.
Looking in the wallet and seeing that there's more in there. Didn't get enough. I don't know.
Maybe.
And then this is another thing on AI. I took my dad to the doctor and I sliced his finger with a knife, and the doctor was using ChatGPT. I know a few doctors that are using it now. I mean, great. I mean, it's a tool. I can remember when I broke my arm. I broke both bones in this forearm and my left forearm, and I went to the hospital there in High Level, Alberta, at a sawmill. And I was waiting for the doctor in the other room in pain, and I went in the back room there, and he had a big book open, this huge book, and he was looking through the book. So what's the difference between looking on ChatGPT or looking through a book?
Exactly. I think this misconception about doctors, it kind of comes from a lot of people that they don't understand what a doctor is. They don't understand what a doctor's education consists of and how much knowledge they have in their heads. They seem to think that doctors are like omniscient. They're almost like demigods. Like some people have that approach. In reality, doctors are just very, very flawed human beings. You know, they're not superhuman. They're just ordinary people, and
Yeah.
they do have experience and expertise and all the rest of it, but they don't have every single ailment in their head. They don't know. And like you, I've seen them get the big book out loads of times, and also use Google where they pretend that they're taking notes, but if you pop your head
Yeah.
around, you see that they're just Googling things. So I'd much rather they were doing ChatGPT, which is actually smart, unlike Google.
U.S. CEOs advocate for mandatory AI education. You know, over 200 CEOs have sent a letter urging inclusion of AI and computer science courses in high school and that. And I would add to that financial literacy. Why is that not in school? You know what I mean? Like why? Why? I know they're trying to push for that in Florida now, financial literacy and stuff. But that's one thing most young people are missing is financial literacy. Like there's some people on the the internet now doing well. Some financial planners are showing you like if you ate McDonald's every day, it cost you $10, or if you invested that $10 every day instead of that, you'd be, like a millionaire by the time I can't remember the timeline by investing the $10 instead of eating it. And then just think if you ate a McDonald's every day, you would be investing, something else would be growing. And not your bank account. So you get to choose
Yeah,
which compounds. You can compound your size, your stomach, or you can compound your bank account. So choose wisely. Choose wisely.
indeed. I think you're bang on though to say, and it's not just financial literacy. I feel like, especially with the younger generations who seem to like never leave their house and they just constantly on TikTok and things like that. I think it would be quite shrewd to teach them other things, like other basic things, just like how to just do stuff in life. I mean, school I feel could be a lot more practical because the
Common
parents
sense.
of these
The
kids aren't
course in
always going to
common
do that.
sense. The course in common sense.
Yeah, I mean, certainly a course in how to think. That would be nice, wouldn't it? To teach somebody how to assess the veracity of a claim and all the rest of it, like how to actually like read an argument, how to deal with an argument. Like I think that would be good. But I mean, maybe I'm asking for too much there.
And it's funny, like the influence, and I'm gonna probably get myself in trouble here, but I remember one of my kids is very hands on and very much like helps and builds and different things, and it's very actually two of them are, and then one is the youngest one is used to more people doing things for him because when he got his first car, I got him his license plates. I said you got to put these license plates on your car, and he didn't ask me. He took it to his mother. He said, "Do I take it to the dealer to do that?"
Just give him a screwdriver.
No, he thought the dealer had to do that. Like they had to put just like okay, there's some things you can do yourself there. Anyway, and then talking about cars, back in the day, if you wanted some horsepower boost, you had to go and get yourself, a bunch of nitrous oxide, or you had to go get like a supercharger or a turbo or different things. Put on some hooker headers. I'm going to date myself here. Put on some hooker headers or like a tunnel ram, or 2 4 barrels or something like that. Now, all you got to do is click the button on your Tesla, and you can add 100 horsepower.
What is that? I mean, what the hell? Explain.
Yeah, so you can actually pick the option. So it's just you unlock the horsepower. So it adds 100 horsepower by just adding acceleration boost. But you pay for the software upgrade, and you just click it and say, "I'll buy that for $2,000." You can add 100 horsepower and to your vehicle with the click of a button.
So I assume that's just the software has figured out a way to kind of like power the battery or something like that to make it
Well, they just unleash
accelerate.
more power. They just unleash more power. It's like it's turned off actually, and they just turn it on. But like I said,
Okay.
back in the day when I was younger, like you had to go out and buy like headers and a 4 barrel and then spend like the next 3 days in a garage tinkering around and you're lucky to get 100 horsepower. You know what I mean? And
And it might explode.
and, and you might be tweaking it forever. I'm sure some of these older people here that are watching this will understand getting 100 horsepower out of a 1968 Camaro was no easy feat. It wasn't like open the app and click the button and there you go. There's 100 horsepower for $2,000 because you would spend the $2,000 regardless. Like if you were doing it with headers and a manifold and a 4-barrel or whatever it is that you're adding, a turbo, you would spend more than $2,000. And just like that, add 100
Is it not a
horsepower.
bit cheeky though that it's like it's already built into the product that you've purchased, but you have to kind of like unlock it with extra money?
Yeah, I don't know. Cheeky, I guess. It's cheaper though too, instead of giving it away. So it is an option, I guess. And then here's something where common sense comes into this. This shows you how maybe some people have common sense, some people don't. I thought this was kind of cute demonstration of how some people have more common sense than others. And this happens to be a dog. Let's play this clip here. There you go.
For once, that long body is coming in handy,
Yeah,
isn't it? Giving it extra
he
balance.
held on there, like one of his claws didn't go through it. And then, and then this is a meme for what happened with the movie industry. For those that might get offended, but you know, this meme will never go away. I don't think. The elbows up. It was actually way worse than this, and I just took kind of like I tried to slim it down here, right? So, so this is elbows up, and there's somebody put up their elbows up, and then something up, and it wasn't very, very, very nice. So, and then the next one here, you can relate to this one, where somebody that's concerned that somebody being patriotic to the flag is, they say they brainwashed you.
Mm. Well, that's the thing, isn't it? This kind of hyperliberalism, or whatever you want to call it. Some people call it woke, don't they? Like the thing that is so strange about it is that it's persuaded its adherents that it doesn't exist, and I guess that's what this meme is trying to play on, isn't it? It's this idea that it's like, oh no, I'm just like neutral. I'm just in the middle. I'm just a normal guy. But obviously, perspective is everything.
The hammer and sickle one gets me. Like I don't know if people have read the history behind that one or not, but
well, they just look at the stated aims. They look at the propaganda. So to try and equalize society, make society fairer, make the rich pay, and all the rest of it. They look at that and they think, well, that's noble. I like that. And then what they refuse to do is look at what that resulted in a real human situation, which is mass murder every single time.
Yeah. Joseph Stalin. Maybe they should study that. Maybe just have a look. Just take a quick look. Just like
get a dartboard, put loads of communist dictatorships or communist regimes on a dartboard, and get a dart and throw it, and whoever it lands on, just research that one, because it's every single one. You know, all of them. Lenin, Stalin, Mao, even like the ones that are considered more moderate, like Deng Xiaoping. These aren't nice people. Look at everything they've done. They're like, it's catastrophe after catastrophe.
Yeah. But I imagine the next one will be better. And then the last meme for the day.
Just need to try again.
The last meme for the day: Africa before 2.6 trillion in aid, and then Africa after 2.6. And I think it's one of those images where you're supposed to guess the three things that are different.
Well, I see this kind of meme and this kind of thing a lot, but I would say if you look under the I can't think of the word. I was going to say bonnet. My Englishness is coming out. If you look under the bonnet, then you do see that Africa has actually changed, like astonishingly, over the last sort of 50 years or something like that. It's profoundly changed. But obviously it's not, in terms of the aid, that's a question of, in many cases, that's just a question of corruption, both Western and African corruption. And that money doesn't go where it should go. It goes to people's bank accounts, doesn't it?
And in the meme section, we're not supposed to question humor. We're just supposed to like absorb it.
Well, all memes, or most memes and most humor have underlying points, don't they?
Like the hammer and sickle one, for sure. There you go.
Yeah. And this has been
Anyway,
used
that's
by some rather devious characters in the past, this particular meme. So I was contextualizing it. Let's put it that
there
way.
you go. That's our show for today. I'm going to be off Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. It'll be Ian and Josh. And then on Friday, it will be Ian, Andrea, and myself. So it should be an exciting week. So, and I'll report from San Fran. I'll have some pictures maybe.
Yeah,
see
take
what
a
San
picture. If
Francisco
you
is.
get robbed, make sure that you record it.
Make sure that I get a body cam. Yeah. I try to avoid some of those areas. And yeah. Anyway, it'll be interesting. Until then, we do thank you for watching Now Media, and we're back tomorrow. Cheers, everyone.
We don't just report the news, we live here too. We're your neighbors, bringing you stories that matter to all of us. No government funding, no outside influence. Kelowna Now, local, independent.